Hello and welcome again to yet another video that we're always going back into being intentional about who we are and just having a moment to stop and slow down from our everyday busy schedules and everyday busy happenings to just have a moment to think through, just to pause. I won't say anything more than that. And I think today's video is one that again, they're all very personal to me, but I think it's also very timely. So I'm glad that you're here and I hope you will be blessed by it. And as always, it gives you something to reflect on for your own journey in your own life. So if you're just joining us for the very first time, I'd love to say a very big welcome to the channel. And if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you subscribing and the likes, and it does take us a long journey. So get straight into our video today, and it is, as the topic says, on the bench. Now, of course, it's very timely because the World Cup has just finished. And first of all, just sidebar, what a final that was. We'll just leave that at that. But I found myself thinking about something that had nothing to do about the winning goal and the entire, World Cup season and all the games and whatnot, or the celebrations, or even just the trophy. It was something much quieter, and that's probably because it came up for me last year when I was, going through a season, and I definitely felt like I was benched. And every now and then, like when you watch the match, when you're watching football, when we're watching the football games, every now and then you will see that the cameras would leave the action on the pitch and they will cut to the bench where the substitutes are, that row of players who are, their boots are on, their shirts they're ready to get on the pitch, they're watching, they're waiting, they're ready really to get on the pitch, So those are the people I was actually quite fascinated by. Now, I don't know if you've ever actually thought about it, but I've always wondered what it must feel like to be one of them. So imagine you've trained with the team, you've trained your whole life for the tournament, you make the national team, you're on there, you're actually there, wearing the whole kit, standing during the national anthem. You've really earned your space and place on the team, and you're there, and then instead of being on the pitch, you're on the bench. You're not in the crowd, you didn't miss the selection, you're still part of the team, and yet you're still waiting for your name to be called to get on the pitch, to actually play the game. And I wondered if that's one of the hardest places to be. Not outside of the team, but it's actually inside the team and yet not quite there. And a little over a year ago, that image became unexpectedly personal for me. Life had slowed down in so many ways that I hadn't anticipated. Some doors I'd expected to open didn't. Some dreams quietly paused. Others seemed to disappear altogether. And yet it didn't feel like a failure to me in that time. It wasn't, because there are times when you can sort of sense like, oh, I've not done it right and stuff. But this time it didn't feel like a failure. But it didn't also feel like obvious progress either. So I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. But it was simply a season where I felt like I was on the bench. Now, sometimes, of course, you would almost say like it was meant to be a season of waiting, but there's just a way that it wasn't really waiting, but yeah, so on the bench is the best description that I can give it. So in that time, I definitely really prayed a lot, questioned a lot. Obviously, I was waiting, but if I'm honest, I sometimes wondered whether I'd somehow missed my opportunity. And I think that's why I'm saying it feels like the hardest place to be. So it feels like, it almost felt like I'd missed the opportunity. But then sometime later, because I just needed to figure out what exactly was going on. What God, like, why do I feel like I'm being benched? And so I obviously started to look around and try and research a bit, not research, but like looking around a bit more about it. And then I came across a sermon by, it's called John Gabriel Arendz, and the sermon's called On the Bench. In that sermon, one sentence that stopped me completely was, yes, you're on the bench, but you were chosen and paid for to be on the winning team. And I promise you, it's just one of those moments when sometimes you just like, oh, wow. I just couldn't, and I couldn't shake that off. It almost clicked, yeah? Because suddenly I realized I'd been seeing the bench the wrong way. Most people think that, when you go to football, and I'm not saying it as a football expert, but from what I obviously see, there's two groups on football. There are those on the pitch, and there are those who didn't make the squad at all. But when you watch football very carefully, there's always that another group, the ones who actually made the team, but they aren't playing, or they're not playing yet. And that is the ones on the bench. So the bench isn't really where rejected players are. It's where the selected players wait. I'll say that again. The bench isn't where rejected players sit and are. It is where the selected players wait. And when you think about it, that, even just me thinking about it right now, that changed everything for me. Because suddenly, waiting didn't automatically mean rejection. It didn't mean God had forgotten me. It didn't mean I'd somehow fallen behind everyone else who is, progressing. It was just that. It was just being on the bench as a selected player waiting for my turn to get on. And I think the powerful thing about all of that, about being on the bench, is because you're on the team where the coach knows each and every one of the players. And when the coach knows that it is time for you to get on and someone else to come back, get off, you trust that he knows the right time to get you on. So when you think about what substitutes are actually doing, when you think about those who are actually sitting on the bench during the game, they are watching the game, they are learning, they are listening, they are keeping warm, they're paying attention, because now they're actually watching the game and seeing which player is a bit weaker on the opponent side, and like they're paying attention to those things, and they're staying close to the coach because they're also seeing how the coach is, reacting to what's happening there, but they are waiting, also knowing that the coach could call on them, because the coach will call on them at a moment's notice. So they are staying close and they are ready. They're not asleep while they're on the bench. They are not wandering off, but they are prepared. They're there. They're like on their marks, as you'd probably call it. So with that in mind, I just want you to picture that again. And while you have that, I just want you to remember, the bench isn't passive. It's the preparation, and I almost want to say it goes a little step further than preparation, because you're ready to go at a moment's notice. I think that's the best way to say it. But you're then in that place where you have a better view of what's happening as well. So looking back on my own journey, I can see that much of what God was doing in my own life wasn't visible from the outside in that time when I was benched. People might have seen less activity on what I'm doing, but God was actually doing deeper work. Not simply just preparing the opportunities, but He was preparing me. Because I was seated on that bench there and I was paying a lot more attention, ready to move, and waiting for the coach, spending so much time with the Lord, but also just being present, being very present. I had family, I had, the kids were around, there's stuff happening, but I was ready. Like, if the next opportunity comes, I would be ready, Lord. So one of the things that I love about scripture, and now I just want to bring it almost full circle, is that how many times people seem to be benched, because that was the other thing I really was curious about when I was having my season. I was like, okay, what is going on? But remember, there's a couple of people in the Bible who were actually benched as well. So we think about Joseph. Joseph had dreams as a young man, but before the palace, he had prison, years of waiting and years of wondering, like, what's going on? I had the dream, I'm supposed to be this person, but it's not happening. Years where it definitely looked like nothing was happening. The other person that comes to mind is David. He was anointed as a king. Imagine that. Chosen by God, like the oil was put on him and everything, the whole lot. Yet he spent years, first of all, just running for his life from Saul. And then you just wonder, but Lord, what's going on? Yeah? He's prepared. He's been, he did all that preparation in the background, but then he's running for his life. And yet, hey, I'm anointed. This is, the crown is supposed to be coming, but the crown came much later. Another person I think about is Moses. Obviously, Moses spending all the time with the Israelites, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 years of his own time, actually, even before the wilderness, 40 years of his own time. This was after he had just left Egypt, preparing, and then finally God calls him to go back to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And then, of course, there's Jesus. Even Jesus, he spent around 30 years in relative obscurity. I mean, we never know what happened between that time. Like the next time 12 years, and then the next time we saw him at 33, or so when he was starting ministry. But that gap time of the 30 years, we know very little about those years. Yet those hidden years were not wasted. They were part of his preparation, and they were part of him getting ready for what he was supposed to do. So when you see it clearly, none of those people in the Bible were overlooked. None of them was forgotten. They had already been chosen, and that's the key thing. But their season had not arrived just yet. Their time to get on the pitch had not yet arrived. And I've been wondering lately whether sometimes we confuse that time as a rejection time. So it is waiting, a version of waiting, but it is not rejection, because I think the key thing that I would love for you to remember is that you're already chosen, you are already on the team, you are already gifted, you're already anointed, you've already had that experience with the Lord giving you this vision very powerfully, and you've experienced it, you've done it, but it's just waiting for that moment when you are now going to be assigned to do what it was all about. So let's not try and rush the time, because God hasn't changed his mind. He still has you in mind for the exact time that he has chosen. So going back to it again, if you feel like you've been benched or you're on the bench, remember that the bench isn't where rejected people sit. It is where the chosen people wait. And I've realized something over the past year. God sometimes seems far more interested, actually not sometimes, most times, actually almost all the time. God is far more interested in preparing people than rushing them into something, because opportunities eventually will arrive, but character takes time. Faithfulness takes time. Humility, takes time. And trust takes time as well. And these are all things that are much needed for you to actually thrive and really thrive in what you've been called to do. So looking back now, I don't think at that time, as I said, I don't think God put my life on hold. I think he was quietly preparing the kind of person who would carry what he had already prepared for me. So I'd done a lot of I definitely had a season before that time when I felt I was benched. I'd really prepared. Like we said, footballers, you will be on the pitch, you will be running, doing all the warm-up as the whole team. But then when your time, you'll be benched for that time at the game. So I think for me I believe and I know that was definitely the time, because after coming out of that, it was like, wow. So just to now bring it all together in this video. So maybe where you are today, and I don't know what situation you might be in and where you are right now, but if life feels strangely quiet, maybe everyone else is moving and you're like, oh, but what's happening? Everyone else is moving. This is happening to their opportunities are coming, and yours seems like it's slowing down instead of moving ahead as well. I think you're watching other people receive their opportunities and you really are wondering, what about me? And if that's you, if that's where you feel you are right now, I wonder, I'm just curious, if you're actually asking the wrong question. So not asking the question in the sense of why am I still on the bench, but rather what's the coach preparing in me while I'm here? What's the coach preparing in me while I'm here? Or what has the coach seen in me that he wants to save me for that moment when I will be able to substitute my teammate on the pitch? That's really powerful. So there is something in you that the coach knows And it's just a matter of actually trusting him to be able to bring you on pitch when you're ready. Because one day, he will call your name. All those guys who sit on the bench eventually get on the pitch. So one day he will call your name. And when he does, when God actually calls your name, when you put on the pitch, you'll be very grateful. I promise you. Come back and quote me on this. You'll be very grateful for everything that sitting on the bench quietly taught you. Because again, remember, you were seated, you were watching, you're seeing what's happening, you're seeing the mistakes, you're seeing the opponent while you're on the bench, but you're prepared to go. So again, if you find yourself waiting today where you feel like you've been benched, you've been sitting on the bench for so long, don't assume you've been forgotten. Don't mistake that stillness for rejection. You are part of the team. You're wearing the kit, you're wearing the uniform, you're wearing that shirt. You were chosen. You are part of the team. And perhaps the bench isn't where, again, emphasizing, it's not where rejected people sit. It is where selected players wait, and you are one of those selected players. You are one of the key players in that team, selected, chosen. And I'd love to leave that thought for you. Really just think about it. So, with all that in mind, I just want to leave one more question for you this week. If you're feeling like you're in that season where you're on the bench, what do you think God might be preparing you for? What do you think he might be preparing in you? Is there a character trait that you think he's maybe working on before he actually changes your position? Or you've been working so hard and he just wants you to rest and gain your strength? And perhaps that changes the waiting for you when you think about it from that angle. Instead of thinking about the waiting I'm trying to survive, I'm trying to do the next thing. Instead, you move into something to steward, something, you get on the pitch ready to actually take responsibility and steward that gifting that positioning and your time on the pitch, that assignment. So I hope this has helped, and I hope it's been an encouragement to rethink that being on the bench analogy and where you are right now. I pray that it has given you some clarity as well, hopefully. And I'll just leave it at that. I won't say much more than that. But thank you again for being here. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. Please also do share. It really does help. I will be also be releasing a short course about formation soon, and I hope that it is something that you might find useful. And as well as I am currently working on a book on formation that I hope to release soon as well. It's like a journal. So if you've watched any of the videos that I've been doing, I'm sure this would be really, really helpful because it's just got beautiful prompts, and I've enjoyed working on it. And I pray that it will bless you, and it will be something that will guide you in your own personal time to be intentional, and just to think about who you are and get to treasure and prepare yourself to be used by God for his purpose to bless and encourage other people. So yeah, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.